Yo, what is poppin' YouTube? Dom Ritchie here, back on the TSS YouTube channel, and we're joined today by a special guest, LDF. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, what's up? Thanks for having me on for today's video. I'm pretty excited for today's episode of ranking Pokemon cards in the format. I of course run the YouTube channel LittleDarkFury. If you want to catch some fun rogue deck content, definitely check out my main channel and all that good stuff. I also have a second channel for extra competitive content, so it's pretty fun. Actually, I think I'm going to have a League Cup report up very soon, or maybe it's already up by the time this is uploaded. And Dom Ritchie was actually at the cup I was at, so that was pretty fun.
Yeah. So, speaking of that League Cup, we are going to, I think we should start where the rogue deck of that League Cup started, and that is with Gouging Fire.
Yeah.
This deck is starting to see a lot more play. Azul kind of popularized it, what was that, a few weeks ago, where he did a stream where he played Gouging Fire. He created, like, the current, like, standard list. I think it's still probably not a great play for Worlds.
It's probably, yeah, if I had to rank it, I'd probably put in, like, maybe C tier. I don't think it's the worst thing you can play. Like, if I were to rank it beside, like, Miraidon, Moon, and Raging Bolt, I would probably put it, like, somewhere in, like, probably C tier. It's, like, kind of, it's just a mid version of a lot of the turbo decks.
Yeah, I really agree, and like I think like in our current format, it's a good turbo deck, right? Like it's real consistent with Magnificent and stuff. But I think like next format, when we get all the dark, like all the utility for dark, I think Moon just gets better. Obviously, Okidogi is gonna get better, and I think like for Worlds in general, I just don't see a lot of people playing something rogue like this, especially because you lose to Charizard, and that is not great. Next, the initial Charizard counter for when Charizard was like huge. What was that, a few months ago, like Orlando? And that is Arceus Giratina. I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with Arc decks. I love to play them, but they never do me well at anything that ever matters. Like, I could go 20-0 at locals 4 weeks in a row and then 0-4 at Double Cup weekends. So, what are your thoughts on it?
It's probably C tier. Like, if somebody played it and did well with it, I wouldn't be surprised. Especially with Charizard coming back with the Worlds format. If Charizard's BDIF again, then there's actually a reason to play Arctina. But Arctina does struggle into a lot of the big decks like Lugia. I think the Turbo Dark decks are going to be really bad. Potentially even something like Raging Bolt, the big basic decks. Gouging Fire would probably not be a great matchup either. But if you want a deck that can probably beat Charizard decently well, even with the new Dusclops, Arctina's probably like still like an okay deck, but it just feels like it's not as good into like most other like big decks. Like Drago's another bad matchup, I think. So
yeah. I think it's just bad into so much, and like Chien-pao is probably gonna get big again.
Yeah.
Just like same reason like Charizard counters, right? And like Arctina takes so many poor matchups into so many of like the actual good decks, right? I can't warrant playing it at all. I think C tier is definitely safe for it. I'd actually like, I don't know, I don't think we'll order C tier. Like S, A, and maybe even B will order a little bit, but like C tier, the deck probably just isn't really relevant enough that it warrants ranking it.
Yeah.
Lost Goo, I think, is probably a poor play.
Yeah. That's definitely a D tier pick.
Yeah, like I've seen a lot of people posting online, like, I played Turbo Goudra today to a League Cup and I won, and I'm like, yeah, but is Turbo Goudra the actual way you won, or is it because your League Cup was kind of mick? I guess we'll never really know, but like, just Goudra definitely past its time. It's got use in Regidrago, but even still, like, some of us are cutting it next format. Like,
yeah.
I just don't. I think the time for Goudra is well past. Especially with how fast everything is, especially with cards like Prime Catcher, like your Goudra's just always dying. Or like when Gust wasn't as easily accessible, when it was like just Boss's Orders, like Counter Catcher wasn't in the format, like it was Pokemon Catcher and Boss's Orders, I think Goudra was fine. But I think right now it's just not awesome.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it's a cool concept. It's more of like a rogue deck that, you know, no one's actually gonna like play it. It's more like one person will play it for fun. It's a cool idea, but it feels too slow. Even with like Monkey Dory and stuff in the deck, I still think the deck kind of just, it's a worse version of what like other Lost Zone decks do better. And I also think that you have like kind of a poor matchup spread. I don't even know if you're even beating Charizard, even with like a couple of
honestly,
key cards.
I don't even think so because of Dusclops and Dusknoir now. Like they just ping your Comfies for a prize card, then just go like whatever, a way to gust up your Goudra and then just KO that, and you're probably having a horrible day.
Yep.
A deck I actually think is better than Arctina is like Archark. And like I know Arc still struggles with those like big heavy 2-prize decks, but I think like if you can survive that early game, Armarouge is still a really great sweeper in the late game. And like depending on what variant you're playing, of course, it can really change because like Unfair Stamp really helps the deck because like let's say late game, like I've been playing a lot of Archark lately, like late game if I can go like Unfair Stamp Armarouge EX and just keep pinging and just like blow stuff up, and 340 HP is a lot of HP, right?
Yeah. I think it's like, yeah, it's probably somewhere between like Arctina in like it's a good deck. I think it would be better than Arctina if someone came up to me and was like, yo, you got to play Arc Armarouge Arctina for Worlds. I would probably pick Arc Armarouge because you have more options too. You can play more fire Pokemon. I've seen builds that are playing like Luminous Energy and Iron Hands in the deck. So there's a lot of cool things you can do. You could play like Cornerstone Ogerpon Luminous Energy to beat Charizard if you really want to nail down the Zard matchup. So yeah, I think Arc Armarouge is probably one of the better ways to play Arc going forward.
Yeah, I think like it's still hard. I still can't justify playing an Arceus deck to Worlds, right? I think it's still probably C tier, but if I had to like say this is the best C tier deck, Arc Armarouge is probably one of those decks in that conversation. But like we talked about earlier, you can't lose to Chien-pao and Drago and Bolt and Lugia, and like that, like you're just not viable at that point, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you like, yeah, the turbo decks are just gonna beat you up. Like if your Arc V just gets KO'd by something like a Miraidon or an Okidogi or a Moon, it's like you just kind of lose at that point. And that's kind of the issue I have with Arc is too many turbo decks in order to justify it. Unless the meta does become like 22% Charizard again going forward, like it was in the Temporal Forces format, then maybe Arc Armarouge is a little bit stronger. But if there's too many like these big fast turbo decks, like you can't win the prize trade sometimes.
No, yeah, like it's literally impossible. And now a deck we might see on your channel over here is Banette. I'd love to guess where we're gonna put this one.
I mean, depends on what build. I don't think Banette with like a Espathra is like great right now. That deck's fallen off. Banette with Gardevoir is actually not a terrible deck. I actually would call that a C tier deck because it has online tournament results. Like there is a cult following for that specific deck. Like certain players will play that deck like every format, and it's not terrible. Banette Gardevoir is actually kind of hard to play against. It's a deck where you can capitalize on opponents not being very good at the game or not knowing how to properly maneuver that type of matchup. And if Zard becomes popular, item lock does become relevant. My issue with Banette, though, is stuff like these big dark decks like Okidogi and stuff get popular, then we might see Banette have a bit of a struggle. We put in a lot in here, but it's definitely a C tier deck in my opinion. I would probably put it between Gouging Fire and Arctina.
Yeah, and like especially like let's say Chien-pao, let's say Zard shoots up a ton of percents. It's good into like it's not great into it, obviously. Like it can function into it, but like Chien-pao is going to be a big deck probably if Charizard gets as big as everybody says. Like Dragapult, like Zardpult too. Like if you can lock all those decks out of rare candies, you're not swinging for too much damage, but like it can be relevant. You could probably squeeze out some wins, and it's definitely one of those decks that like it'll probably grief a lot of League Cups, a lot of online mix just by hitting good matchups. But like at Worlds, is that really gonna happen? And like that's kind of the difference. Is Worlds is those high level players that know how to play against everything, and that's like people sometimes don't take that into account where they're like, oh, I'm gonna play Rogue. You probably don't want to play Rogue to Worlds because a Worlds caliber player is just gonna be able to think around it and just maneuver you, right?
Yeah, I will say this though with Banette. Banette has had that rogue surprise success before at major tournaments. Like at EUIC, Banette Giratina nearly won the tournament. And in all honesty, Bradner was probably still favored into Tord going into that finals, but he was playing against Tord, right?
Yeah.
And I think Banette, it feels like one of those like surprise rogue decks that could actually perform well. Like I honestly wouldn't be surprised out of all the decks in C tier that we probably put. I would not be surprised if somebody made like a good run at Worlds with a Banette deck. Not saying they're going to win it or make top 8, but I wouldn't be surprised to see somewhere somebody made Day 2 at Worlds with a Banette deck. Because it does feel like one of those decks that can be a surprise rogue deck that can just kind of pop out, or a Banette tech card in a specific big archetype can do well, like we've seen before at EUIC.
Yeah, 100%. And stuff like that does happen. Now Snorlax here. Snorlax is pretty good, right? Well, it's pretty okay right now. But I think like next format, like your good matchups are just starting to not be as good. Like decks
you take
like
a
Charizard
Zard matchup now too, and Zard can play the Pekka Runt now if they want which
Yeah.
like completely counters your entire deck. So
Yeah, I know.
honestly, I'd still say it's a B tier deck. I don't think it's a terrible deck, but they also have Dusclops now. They can actually force you to take a prize, meaning that now they can one-shot Rotom and stuff like that. They can one-shot your Shiyu. Yeah, Zard just becomes a lot more difficult to deal with, and a good Zard player probably can beat Snorlax now. It is still one of those decks that can still cheese out wins. Like, I would imagine like the Turbo decks probably aren't bad. I don't know about the okidogi matchup because it feels like Pekka it just kind of just farms Snorlax. Like, it's such an annoying counter, and there's not really any cards you can play in your deck to beat Pekka. I think Snorlax definitely is taking a bit of a hit. It is getting slightly stronger, though. There are some new cards. Like, I think Xerosic could see some play. If like, all these other, like, non-bad matchups for Snorlax get popular, like Drago, I think is a good matchup if they don't play Penny. I think you're fine into, Gardevoir can be beatable if that still sees play. Raging Bolt's not a terrible matchup either. And like these like turbo decks could still be winnable. The Okidogi one's probably gonna be your worst one due to the Pekka. You might still be okay into like some Lost Zone decks because they're not playing Tomb. You can still beat Lost Zone, I would say. Like, it's not a terrible deck, but it feels like the Charizard matchup becomes harder, and that was one of the reasons why you want to play Snorlax, because you have a good Zard matchup.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like, I definitely big agree. Like, Snorlax it'll probably cheese out at least one, maybe 2 day 2s. Like, it'll probably see some success, but like, I'm really looking at that meta, and I'm like, I really just don't know, like, if Charizard's going to be as big as everybody says. And in my testing, Charizard will probably be as big as everybody says, because that deck is insane.
Yep.
I just don't know, like, if I'm trusting Snorlax to do overly well, especially, like, if we see Zard at the top tables. Is Snorlax really going to be up there, right? I think it's still fine, though. I think it's better than any of the other decks we've talked about so far.
Yeah, it's a pretty good B tier pick in my opinion. It gets some new cards, but overall, it does feel like its best matchup just becomes a little bit more harder to play against now, and that is one of the main issues. But maybe somebody can figure out a good Snorlax list for Worlds that beats the new version of Charizard, and maybe that works. But it does feel like your Zard matchup is just a lot harder now, and that's not good. So.
No, 100%. The first deck that we might actually see in A or S tier is Regidrago. Now, this deck has seen a lot of hype, and with Kyurem, that is quite respectable, because if we could go like KO3 Curlia, or KO3 Manders, or a Mander, and a Duskull, or Mander Pidgey Duskull, like, there's so much flexibility coming in with Regidrago. It's already proving itself right now, and for a deck that just 100% gets better next format, it's kind of hard to look at that and not say it's a really high tier. What are your thoughts on this deck?
I think it's an A tier deck. S tier feels a little too popular for the deck. Like, it doesn't feel like Drago can be an S tier deck. It is very powerful, but the issue is it's almost like Lugia. It's very inconsistent at times. Sometimes you just don't do what you want to do on your second turn. When you do what you want to do on the second turn, the deck's ridiculous. Like, turn 2 Dragapult is ridiculous. Turn 2 Gouging, turn 2, Kyurem is going to be just insane. The problem is actually getting to that point is a bit of a challenge. Drago just feels like it's going to be popular for Worlds, I think, for sure, because people are going to, like, I think it'll be popular no matter what. I just don't think it's the best deck in the room. I would just call it an A tier deck. It's definitely one of the better decks for Worlds, but I don't think that the thing holding it back is going to be the consistency issues, 100%. And it also, like, apart from maybe a good Zard matchup, I don't know if it's beating other, good decks that we're going to talk about very soon. Like, a lot of the turbo decks feel like it actually still could be a tough matchup for Drago.
Yeah. Chien-pao here. This is a deck, I've not seen too much Chien-pao this format. I don't know about you. Like, last night's Cup, obviously, there were a couple of Chien-paos. Yeah. I believe every Chien-pao player at that Cup made top cut.
I think there was there 2 in top cut?
Yeah, there was 2 in top cut, right? But like,
because I played against one in top 4.
Okay, yeah. And then Gouging Fire beat the other one in top 8. So yeah, there was 2 Chien-paos there. I think Chien-pao gets better, just because like the popular decks are going to be more favored for Chien-pao. Like, Lugia might get a little more popular just because like Charizard's becoming popular, and I think Lugia can be pretty good into that deck. And like Charizard obviously is normally a pretty fine matchup, and especially like because Dusknoir doesn't knock out something like a like a Baxcalibur. It does knock out a Frigibax, but like, I think in general Chien-pao is probably a good play. There's obviously that Chien-pao group of guys that are probably going to play Chien-pao for Worlds. And as we've seen, like even this format, they are milking us for our money. So I would not be surprised at all to see Chien-pao make a really, really deep run at Worlds.
Yeah, I think that'll definitely happen. It could struggle into maybe the turbo decks. I don't know if its okidogi matchup's very good. Its Raging Bull matchup's never been great. But yeah, has a good Zard matchup. I think your Drago matchup's not bad. If they don't like turn to decimate your board, I think you just beat Regidrago flat out. Probably, I honestly, I don't know if A tier feels a little too high for the deck, but it is a really good counter to Charizard. I think the Zard matchup maybe becomes slightly more difficult with the Dusclops and stuff. Because, yeah, if they can go Dusknoir, they can maybe KO a Bibarel plus, like, Counter Catcher Stamp You or something, which is pretty bad. But it feels like Chien-pao's still, like, a good deck. Like, if it draws hot, it still can run your opponent over. Yeah, it's tough to say if it's A or B. Like, I'm leaning towards A and B, like, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, like, I was kind of in the same spot. I'm like, A tier feels high because I don't think it's, like... I don't think it's I don't think it's that great, but I think like B tier is like those decks that are like they're a fine play, and if you know your deck really well, you should probably play it. But like if I haven't played a game of Chien-pao, I'm probably not locking Chien-pao in for Worlds.
Yeah. Like it's going to take 50-50s to like Lost Box. Drago, like I said, is going to be a 50-50. If you can go first against Drago, I think you win the matchup because you know, you can avoid getting Kyurem'd or Drago or Dragapulted, but against like other stuff like your Lax matchup has never been that good, so you know if you hit a Snorlax or like a control deck, you're gonna have a bad day. Your Lugia matchup's fine. It takes 50-50s, and then it has like potentially a favorable Zard matchup. But if Zard does play the Dusclops line, there's a chance that could still be a problem for you because they can go like Dusclops, Dusknoir, Counter Catcher, Knock You stuff. Like it does have challenges it has to get over, but I think it's a good B tier pick, 100% though.
Yeah. All right. The next deck, Lost Zone Box. This is a deck that like. I think Lost Zone Box has kind of been in the same spot ever since it came out. It came out and it was good. It stayed good. It's still good. Like it's never like there's been times where it's like Lost Box is the best deck in format, but like I think as a general rule, it's always been like one of those like top 5 decks where like a good like if you just hit the right cards playing Lost Zone Box, you're just winning every game. It's flexible. Exactly. It does everything you want. Especially like if you decide to play a Moon package, which I know some people aren't right now. But like I think like the deck just kind of it can do literally everything you need a deck to do, and especially like it really rewards that high level play. I don't know if I'm putting it in A or maybe B tier. It's one of those kind of like Chien-pao where I'm like, it's good, but like I wouldn't say it's a great deck to be playing, especially with the rise of Charizard and like.
I don't know. I honestly think Lost Box is still A tier because I don't think Zard's gonna play Jirachi at Worlds.
Yep.
Like the only thing Lost Box worries about is Kyurem. To be honest, though, like if you just put a mana fee down, is it really that scary? Like if you're like, I guess your Drago matchup's going to be slightly unfavored if they have Dragapult and Kyurem as both threats. I don't think Lost Box is terrible though because Gardevoir might get a little bit worse. You don't have to deal with the Flutter Mane Klefki nonsense anymore.
Yeah.
You know your Lugia matchup's still not bad. The Thorns is kind of insane. We could see the Moon build come back in a full swing thanks to Charizard getting popular. I mean, I think Lost Box should still be Charizard, in my opinion. You know, they're not going to play Jirachi. Maybe if they're playing all these like extra like random cards, maybe you're going to be more favored because, you know, maybe they're not going to get the mana fee down right away. You can Greninja them turn 1, turn 2 Sableye. Maybe if they're going to put down the Pheasantipity, it's not a bad, you know, target in the late game to finish something off if you can't knock out a Charizard. I still think Lost Box is still A, to be honest with you. Like, I don't think Kyurem's going to be that popular other than in Drago. And even then, like, if you just put mana fee down, you should be fine. I don't know. I think it's still A tier. I think Lost Box will have a good run at Worlds, probably in top 8. I'm going to say it's probably going to get a top 8 performance.
Yeah, probably. I think Lost Box is kind of like, we often, like, we'll draft, like, what decks we think are going to do well at events, and Lost Box is always, like, the first or second deck picked. Because, like, it just seems to do well at every single event, even when people are counting it out.
Yep.
Like people at the start of the season were like, "Yep, Kyogre Lost Zone Box is dead," and then as we saw how that went in, what was it, Pittsburgh?
It won immediately.
Yep, and everybody was like, "Yep, it's not good because we have Terra Pokemon now, because we have this, because we have that," and then it's like, "Oh, yep, I'm just gonna still come in and absolutely destroy everybody."
Yeah,
like Lost Zone Box. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say the thing with Lost Zone Box is when you're going into a format like the Worlds format and nobody really has like everything figured out yet. Playing a very consistent, strong list like Lost Box punishes players who have built unoptimized lists. So, like, going into this format, we're probably not going to see the optimal Charizard list unless, you know, Tord figures something out, obviously. For the most part, I think Charizard lists are going to be slightly worse than they are right now, meaning that you probably will have a good time in Lost Box. And like I said, no one's going to play Jirachi, in my opinion. Yeah, I think Lost Box is still really good. I don't know. I think people are just really just underestimating how good the deck still is for Worlds. Like, it's never a bad play. You can fix your matchups if you want. Like, you can play stuff like if you want to go back to the Moon, or you want to stick to the Thorns Hands Blood Moon package or not. So, yeah, I would still call an A-tier deck. Like, yeah, Kyurem's annoying, but to be honest, like, if Regidrago's playing Prime Catcher, Cologne Kyurem, and they just happen to do that on the second turn of the game, you know what? Whatever, bro. Just, you win the game. Like, you're probably going to take a slight unfavorable to Drago. I still don't even think it's that bad, though, because if you just mention Manaphy, they have to go Dragapult, and yeah, I think the matchup's fine. I don't know. I think Lost Box is still an A-tier deck, in my opinion. It's probably got a good Zard matchup, so.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and like you said, it's just so flexible, and like people are going to be playing unoptimized list because that's just new formats like that, like a NAIC and stuff. Gardevoir and Lost Zone Box. Yeah, exactly. That's why it just keeps doing all that stuff. Like coming into Pittsburgh, it's like, well, we've had a break from events, and then Lost Zone Box wins, and it's just probably going to keep doing that until it rotates. The next deck I want to talk about is Dialga here.
C tier.
Yeah, I love Dialga.
It's a deck that's never going to be unplayable at this point because it did win a tournament. There's, people who will always play it, and it's still not even that bad. It's apparently got a good Zard matchup. Apparently, according to like Andrew Hedrick, the deck's fine into Zard. It honestly probably is okay to like Drago too. I feel like you should just run Drago over pretty easily. If you just set a Dialga up, like how do they knock that thing out? Yeah, C tier. I don't think it's amazing anymore. It's not as good as it could have been post Indianapolis. It's a good C tier pick, to be honest. It's like fine.
Yeah.
Like
and especially with like Charizard getting getting like Dust Noir, where they can like Dust Noir away your Matang. That probably makes that matchup even worse.
Yeah.
Now another deck that this is one of my favorite decks of all time. Actually, I love this concept. It's a Festival lead here. You do take a good Charizard matchup, so watch for that one, guys. Rogue deck of the event, gonna be Festival lead. I think it's probably pretty safe to say that deck probably deserves D tier.
I agree.
Besides your Charizard matchup, you take Guardy's pretty free, but besides that, that's it. Those are your good matchups. Guardy, Charizard, so probably don't play that ever. Drago's next to impossible. Pretty much everything. Chien-pao's next to impossible. There's a lot of matchups that are just abysmal for that deck. No.
Yeah.
Fun for locals though. Shadow Festival lead. Miraidon. This is a very polarizing deck. People dialed it as mid-Rhydons ever since it came out, pretty much, and then it proved people wrong. Seems to pretty much only be good when people are sleeping on it, as every time people have been like, Miraidon's the best play for this event, it tanks.
Yep.
So if people are going to be sleeping on Miraidon for this event, I think it might be okay, but if people are ready for it, it's got a track record that isn't great. What are you saying about Miraidon here?
I would put it in C tier. It feels really bad in a Charizard meta. The reason to play Miraidon would be because it's one of the better Iron Hands decks, but the use of Iron Hands is no longer as good anymore. It might even lose to the Okidogi Turbo deck. Raging Bolt's still a bad matchup. Charizard's an abysmal matchup. I do think your Drago matchup's not bad, actually. You can beat Drago, but like other than that, I think Miraidon, it's definitely not a good play for Worlds, in my opinion. It just doesn't have a good Zard matchup, and it doesn't have... If Gardevoir is slipping in popularity, it doesn't beat Gardevoir either. Or it's not going to be able to keep up with the Gardevoir players falling off, and they're going to play Charizard. So, it's like C tier. Yeah.
Yep. Espathra, we slightly talked about this deck a little bit earlier. With Charizard getting bigger, people will play Espathra again because initially people just thought it countered Charizard. I don't know. In my testing, every time I've been Charizard into Espathra, the matchup actually doesn't even feel that bad.
No.
Like, it feels like a 55-45, and, like, I'm still winning more than 55% of the time as Charizard, even. I think Espathra is one of the biggest cope decks that I've probably
100%.
seen in a long time, man. Like, people play this deck, and they're like, it's cracked. I'm like, are you sure you're just not better than your opponents? Which happens at regionals, right? Like, I played Lost Zone Bowl, and that deck is huge cope. I still saw day twos with that deck, but, like, the second I played good players, they were like, yeah, your deck is just not good. And I think that's kind of what Espathra does, where people are like, oh, but it made tons of day twos. I'm like, yeah, but how many of those did it convert into cash? I think like one, maybe two. Right? Like, Espathra got to be one of my most hated decks probably ever, just because the people that ride it, they ride it. They're like, they swear by that deck, and I'm like, this deck is not good.
Yeah, probably. Maybe bottom of C tier.
Yeah.
It's fallen off completely, but if Charizard's best deck again, then there's a reason to play Espathra. That's my logic with that.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I get that. And I feel like it's probably better than both Dipplin and Lost on Gouging.
Yeah. If I had to choose, I would play that, yeah.
Yeah, time for one of the decks that really people are talking about. Is it going to stay popular? Is it going to die? I'm kind of on the it might not be great because it does snore Charizard. And that's Gardevoir here. The deck right now is, as we all know, absolutely dominating the meta. If you look at cup wins, Gardevoir is tons of them. If you look at all the big cups, Gardevoir is like 2 or 3 out of the top 8. The deck is just very good right now. It's pretty consistent. There's tons of different ways you can play it, so people can't even sit and like predict your list. But I think going into the next format, like into Worlds, maybe it gets a little bit worse.
Yeah, its Zard matchup isn't great, or at least like it's apparently not good. Even though I do think actually Gardevoir can beat Zard, unless you're against like a really good Zard player, it might be tough. Gardevoir definitely slips a little bit. If Drago gets more popular, that's also not your greatest matchup. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know if it's like A or B or not. Putting it at B tier feels bad because the deck is still like insanely powerful. Like it has all these counter plays. It can almost win like any matchup, to be honest. Like Gardevoir, there's really no deck in the format right now that beats Gardevoir flat out. Like Gardevoir can win any matchup. The deck's still really strong. Honestly, it might still be an A tier deck. I don't know. B tier feels a little bit too low for how good the deck actually is. Even though Charizard's popular, right?
I know, like, I think, like, Charizard's popular, but I think Gardevoir is one of those decks, like, people severely underestimate going, I'll Flutter Mane into the active, and then I'll, Counter Catcher, and then Stamp you. It's like, most decks just can't do anything about that.
Yep.
And, like, Flutter Mane's not that great of an attacker, or, like, I'll Counter Catcher up something, and then just sit and Scream Tail Snipe your whole bench, and, like, sometimes, like, Gardevoir is going to be one of those decks that just, it does stuff like that. It's going to squeak out wins and unfavorables. It's going to do whatever it needs to do, right? And I think, like, yeah, it's probably still A tier. I think it is so strong into, like, a good amount of the meta that losing to Charizard's probably fine because you are just that good in everything. And like you said, like, right now, I don't think it takes any, like, there's not one deck that I'm like, this deck auto-wins Gardevoir. That is, like, somewhat viable, at least, right? Like, if you're playing 4 Lost Cities and, like, yeah, you're probably beating Gardevoir. But if you're playing 4 Lost Cities, you're playing nothing that is meta-relevant, so...
Exactly, and you're not beating anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I was going to play Palkia to the Cup yesterday because I didn't know all you guys were coming. Because I was like, I know 2 boys are on Gardevoir, and yeah, I'm like, I'm pretty confident I'll just skill diff everybody else. And no, everybody else showed up. I'm like, I'm not touching a deck with 4 Lost Cities and a Palkia in it right now. One of the other biggest frauds of the format, this deck is actually seeing some success over in Japan right now, and that's Greninja. I think Greninja is... I like Greninja. I had big hopes from Greninja because I loved Rapid Strike way too much. That being said, I'm really not sure Greninja is that great.
Yeah, D tier. It hasn't had enough good results yet to warrant it actually to have a spot on this tier list. I don't know. If somebody does well Worlds with it, bump it up. But I think going into Worlds, like, nobody's figured out a good Greninja list. It's inconsistent. It feels like a worse Dragapult.
Exactly. And, like, if it's been this long and people still can't figure out a good Greninja list, that's probably a sign that Greninja's probably just not that great of a card.
Yeah.
Like, even like a deck like Festival Lead, right? Like, if you look at lists, like, there's like 3 or 4 types of lists. You're playing Arven builds or you're playing like Turbo builds or whatever, but like people have at least figured the deck out. Whereas like every Greninja list is like 6 or 7 cards different, and I'm like, we can't be having that and still being a viable deck, right?
Yep.
They don't even know what his ideal partner is, and I guess Dragapult's the same way, but Dragapult's actually a good card, so...
Exactly.
And then a deck that I actually think is probably a good play for Worlds. Like, not good, but like...
Not bad.
It's probably... Yeah, it's not a bad play. Like, I'd say it's probably like better than a lot of the C-tier decks is like this Iron Thorns here. Obviously, you shut off a lot of stuff, right?
I say C-tier. It's a very interesting archetype that I actually think is a lot better than people do give it credit for. I just don't think enough people are actually playing the deck. But yeah, it's really good into a lot of decks. I think that your Zard matchup honestly isn't terrible. They can't do really anything in the match other than attach energy and hope that you don't find Boss or Hammer. You have Legacy energy. The Zard matchup might get a slightly more tougher due to Dusclops because they can actually force you into like range of being able to one-shot you if they set up. But yeah, I think Iron Thorn is actually not that bad of a deck. I would probably put it in C tier. Is it better than like Miraidon? I don't know about that. But the deck's like not terrible. It cheeses wins. Lugia might stay popular. That's like it literally just auto wins Lugia. It's not a bad deck. It's actually not bad at all. I would say it's more of a C tier. Like it's obviously more of like a memeier deck, but it's a meme deck that could have legs. It's kind of like the Espathra of this format, I would argue.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good analogy. Where I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I think it's good enough that I could see it cashing out at an event, but I'm not sitting here like Iron Thorns is locked for top 8 because it's probably just not, right? Like,
no.
Do I see it making a deeper run than Arctina? Probably. Do I see it making a deeper run than Banette or Dialga? Probably.
Probably, yeah.
Just because, like, someone that's good is going to sit here and go, I'm just going to counter Charizard, right? Because, like, even so, we're like, oh, Charizard's got Dusk Noir, but, like, how are they finding Dusclops and stuff if Charizard is not having any abilities? And like I think it'll probably just cheese its way into some decent spots. Lugia here, one of the biggest culprits of this deck is really good and then doing really bad, and then this deck is really bad and then doing really good. Like we saw at the start of the season, everybody was like, Lugia sucks, don't play this deck, and then it blew up. And now we saw at closer to the end of the season, everybody's like, Lugia is going to be the best deck in the format, and then NAIC, that was the biggest bag fumble I've probably ever seen. And then Chinchino wasn't even in the deck.
Yeah. Our own Alex Shemansky did pretty good with the deck, but he played it with like Vessel and no Chinchino.
Yeah, he literally played like Rainbow Lugia before Chinchino came out. People were like riding Lugia and they're like, yep, I'm just going to play Vessels and tons of basic energies. And then Shemansky was like, yeah, I think I'll do that. And then took it and obviously cashed out. Like, I don't know. I think Lugia is probably fine for Worlds. I think people are going to play it, right? It's Lugia. Yeah. It's always going to see play as long as it's legal. It's going to be like Lost Box where like it's just good enough that it can do whatever. Miraidon won't be popular because of Charizard. Turbo Hands won't be popular because of Charizard. So Lugia can probably thrive a little bit better going into those formats.
I'd say it's probably B tier, high B tier. Yeah. I might be underestimating that though, because like in fairness, it does beat Drago. It probably beats Charizard. I don't know, B tier feels a little low for the deck. Honestly, it genuinely could be A tier. Like, if you really look at its matchup spread, it's actually not that bad. I don't know, B tier could be a little, like, too disrespectful for Lugia. But at the same time, it has a lot of consistency issues. It's still Lugia at the end of the day.
But
it's like Drago in that regards, where it's like, the deck, if it sets up, the deck's, like, broken. But if it doesn't set up, then, you know the issues, right? You played it yesterday to the cup.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the Lugia hate train. I whiffed turn 1 Lugia all 5 of my games yesterday.
So silly.
Yeah, whiffed it all 5 games. I still went 3-2 and then bubbled 9th, which was tragic. But like, Lugia, like it just like when it got rolling, it rolled really hard. Like even though like if I were to go second in all my games, I would have been fine. Which maybe Lugia just wants to go second from now on. I don't know. But like it might fix the consistency issues a little bit, but then you're going second, which obviously isn't great. I think like Lugia, it does so much that I think it's so good when it works, but I think it not working is kind of what's holding it back, and it hasn't really done anything that warrants it to be higher than B tier for me. Like we've seen all these other decks do well. Like Regidrago is kind of the exception to that, but like I think you can't not put Regidrago in A tier for like next format. Like it's just dumb. No. It's dumb not to do that. And Lugia is not really gaining anything. Like Gardevoir and Lost Box, we obviously saw do really well. NAIC, Charizard, as we all know, is going to be BDIF. Lugia, I just don't think is warranted anything higher. The next deck we're going to talk about is Arc Control, or just Arceus in general. That isn't Arctina and Arc Armarouge. Unfortunately, I think it's bad.
I'd slam them all in C tier. I don't know if there's an Arc deck you can justify higher than C tier, because Arc just struggles into a lot of the big decks. Like, I don't think you're good into Drago. I don't think you're good into Lugia. You're not great into Gardevoir. You're not, maybe okay into Charizard. That's about it. Like, it's fine. It's Arc at the end of the day. Like, it still is just an Arc deck, but yeah, it's C tier. I don't think you can really put Arc higher than C tier at the moment.
If you were to show me this for Worlds 2020, 2022, that Arc was all in C tier, I'd have never believed you, because that card, when it came out, we were like, this is the best card that's ever been printed. It was literally like everywhere. Like Worlds and NAIC was just arc on arc crimes. It's insane. Blissey's a deck.
I mean, probably D tier. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think
Blissey's a deck. Don't think it needs much more than that. It's probably just Arceus, but a little bit worse. It's tanky, I guess. Return is kind of bad. 180 damage, probably 160 with a DTE.
Yep.
Yeah, deck. Nobody's played it at all. Lost to Dragapult. Now this is a deck. People thought this was the best way to play Dragapult. I think
it is not even close.
You would probably disagree.
Not even close. It is not. It's an okay deck. I've played it a bit. It's actually a little bit better than I gave it credit for.
Yep.
For Worlds, I mean, realistically, it's a C tier deck. It has the potential to be better than a C tier deck, but it's a C tier deck. It's like
100%.
If it does stuff, it does stuff. It's like okay. It's probably a worse Radiant Charizard Lost Zone deck, and I don't even know if that deck's even good going into Worlds.
No,
I don't know. It's like not terrible. It's not the best way to play Dragapult by a long shot. It's definitely like an okay deck though. Like I would put it in the same category of like, Miraidon or whatever. Like it's okay. Like somebody's gonna play, maybe do day 2 with it, but I don't. No big player's gonna be like, I'm gonna play Lost Dragapult to Worlds and do well with it because it's not. It's not that good of a deck.
Yeah, we're not going to see Azul be like, I heavily debated Lost Dragapult. We're not going to see Tord go, I heavily debated Dragapult. Like, Lost Dragapult, at least. Like, people will debate Dragapult, obviously.
Yeah.
Lost Tina, another one of the initial, this deck beats Charizard decks. I don't know if it still beats Charizard.
I mean, going into Worlds, I think the deck is... It's actually weird. I mean, it's maybe C tier, but at the same time, I could realistically see it be B tier. Zard matchup's not bad. Your Lost Box matchup, it's actually weird. All the decks above it kind of just destroy it. Okay, it's C tier. It's C tier.
Yeah. I'm kind of looking at it. I'm like, Charizard might not even be that great because, like, the good thing was it's like, oh, well, we're just trading 2 prizes and 2 prizes, but now Charizard can take a 3-prize turn late in the game. That we obviously don't like that. Like, Dusclops and Dust Noir just probably aren't great. If they go, like, turn 2 Dusclops and then Burning Darkness, that's not great, especially if you've taken like 1 or 2 prizes, right? Because initially we're safe if we've taken 2 prizes, but like if they go like, I'll go Dusclops and then I'll do 50 to your Tina, and then they can just take an extra prize card and then we just lose, right? They can force us to get on that odd prize trade, which isn't what Tina wants to do.
You can't even Abyss Seek anymore either, because you can just go Abyss Seek and they just go Dusclops, knock you out. Yeah,
exactly, and like that's kind of what's tragic, and that's kind of why I'm like, maybe Tina's just bad into Charizard now, because Charizard has so many plays out of it. Kingdra, this deck definitely also D tier.
Yeah, maybe it's a cute deck, but it's the worst Chien-pao.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, that's what I've kind of been thinking too, is like people were talking about it a lot, and they're like, it seems really good, and it does seem good, but like it seems good in like 2013, 2014 format.
Yeah,
where like I have tons of energy on my Pokemon, but it's like nowadays, like, are we really setting up 2 stage 2s of Excalibur and a Kingdra? Are we really, like, are we surviving long enough that getting all those energies on Kingdra is actually going to be worth it? I just think, like, it's probably worse Chien-pao.
Yeah.
Another newcomer here is Okidogi. Now, I think this is probably the best or second best, like, deck coming out of, like, what is it? Coming out of Shroud of Fable. Yeah, I think, like, excluding like Dusclops going into Charizard, I don't really think that might be a new deck. That'd be the front runner for best deck. But I think like out of all like the new like brand new decks, I think it's definitely the best. Like it's obviously better than Kingdra. I think it's I think it's probably good. We actually are missing Raging Bolt here.
No Bolt.
Don't know how we missed that one. We even both looked this over. But yeah, like I think like it's probably right around where Raging Bolt would be.
Probably B tier. Yeah.
Yeah, I think both of them are probably like just B tier. Like play them because they're probably pretty consistent. Their Charizard matchups are winnable, whereas Miraidon's isn't. Well, like obviously you can win, but you're not winning that matchup.
It's not.
Whereas whereas like Raging Bull, like you can make plays around it. Okidogi can make plays around it, right?
Yeah.
I think both those are just gonna be B tier decks. They're both like they'll probably both struggle a little bit with some consistency issues. Obviously, like we know that you're just getting dummied by single prize decks. Like there's nothing you can do. Lugia probably takes a good matchup into both. I don't know. They're probably both just safe in B tier to me. I don't really see them any higher. I don't really see them lower. I think they're probably better than every C tier deck, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what about Roaring Moon, where Roaring Moon is kind of just the exact same thing as Okidogi, except Roaring Moon is Roaring Moon in the place of Okidogi. I think it actually is a better deck to play because I think Roaring Moon in general is just a better card than Okidogi, right? And like people wanted to play Okidogi is like, oh, it's all the Pokemon. I don't even know what their group is called because they don't really keep up with the games anymore. But like, it's like, oh, it's Okidogi and Perchuant and what's that? Pheasantipity. But it's like, I think Roaring Moon's probably just better.
My issue with Moon though is if you Frenzy Gouge a Charizard, they could just Dusclops you.
Yeah, and that's probably a big issue. Now, if we have, like, a Charm on there or something, it might be a little bit easier, but I don't know. I think there's definitely pros and cons to playing it.
I'd maybe B tier. Yeah, B tier's safe, I guess. Yeah. I think it's the worst deck in B tier, though, to be honest.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think there's definitely pros and cons. I think Okidogi's, I don't know, it's kind of hard, because I see big benefits to both, for sure. Moon Sparse, I don't think this deck is really that great.
Nah, this is C tier. It's maybe a worse Turbo Moon, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like, yeah, it's cool. It can do a lot. It doesn't do a lot, actually. It just swings with 1 prizes or 2 prizes. But I think it's worse Ancient Box. It's worse Turbo Moon. Like, there's, I don't see a reason to play it right now. It was really cool going into, like, Orlando and stuff because people figured out a good list early. And I think that was really important, and like we were talking about with the new format, is having a good list is really important, but I just don't think there's really a place for it.
Yeah.
Ancient Box. This is a deck, I actually think Ancient Box is pretty solid.
I don't know, the problem is it's got a bad Zard matchup.
Yeah.
B tier would, honestly, it might be C tier. It's not even that great in a Gardevoir, to be honest, because Gardevoir just destroys you.
Yeah, they just
with
stamp.
Unfair stamp, yeah. Honestly, it's a C tier deck. I hate to say it, I love this deck, but if Zard's BDIF again, I just can't warrant it too high. Like, looking at it, like, its Drago matchup isn't great. They can Gouging or Noivern you. Your Lost Box matchup is very good, but that's, like, all you're really good against is, like, Lost Box, Chien-pao, and that's it. You're not bad into Okidogi. I guess, but they can play the Monkey Door EX too, I guess.
Maybe it is low. I know, like, it's done U proper. I know Ancient Box done U proper. I know it's done Vulcan Turtle proper. I know it's done Zac proper, but I think it's probably just it's past its prime. I think with Charizard coming back. Now this is just Dragapult, like just Dragapult with Pidgeot, Dragapult with Xatu, whatever, just Dragapult. Whereas like we've got Dragapult Zard over here. What do you think about Dragapult no Zard? Yeah. Okay, I'm thinking the same thing.
Yeah, Dragapult with like Pidgeot, Dragapult with Xatu, they're both B tier decks. They're pretty solid decks still, I think. Dragapult doesn't really get worse. Like Zard's still a good matchup. I think that's a win. B tier deck for sure. I think Dragapult's still like a solid deck.
Yep, and then Sablezard. You did talk about this a little bit earlier where you said you weren't sure if it was great. I'm also not sure it's great. I think it's probably worse Lost Box.
It's kind of weird. Its Zard matchup could be okay because you can play Devo and stuff, but your Drago matchup might be a little tough. If they're not, I mean, if they don't have Gouging, I think you're fine because you can just play like Zard plus like Choice Belt or something, Defiance Band to like one-shot them.
Yep.
Sablezard's not terrible in a Drago, but if you just get Kyurem'd or Drago'd, or Dragapulted, it's probably, I don't even know if I'd call it a B tier deck. I guess, well, we all know there's like the Sablezard Online Warrior right now. It's like winning all the online tournaments of the deck. Yeah, and that's put the deck on the map.
Get them an interview on this channel. I can't lie. We need to hop on that. PJ, I'm DMing you about that later.
I'm down for that, bro. That'd be sick.
That'd be kind of tough.
Yeah. Sablezard maybe is a B tier deck. It's just maybe a worse Turbo Lost Zone deck.
Yeah.
It's never had a bad Zard matchup though, but your Drago matchup's tough. Your Turbo Lost Box matchup's good. It's not bad. I think B tier's safe. It's also good into the Turbo decks, like the
I was gonna say it's good into the big basics too. I think that's something that's really important to think about too. I
B tier's good.
Yeah. And then Turbo Hands, Charizard's big, so Turbo Hands can't be good. Yeah, I think it's got to go C tier. I think it's just not. It doesn't beat
Drago. It doesn't beat Zard. It barely can be Lost Box.
Even Guardy's kind of shaky.
Yeah, it's not beating the Turbo decks either.
No. I think it's literally just getting. You beat Lugia.
That's about it, though.
You got a good Lugia matchup. There's
your Guardy matchup's okay too.
Maybe 5%. Pidgeot Control.
I'd put that in. The issue Pidgeot Control faces still is Charizard being able to abuse Dusclops and Duskull, which is really bad for the deck. Same thing with Snorlax. It's better than Snorlax, though, in my opinion, because you can tech your deck out more for the meta, which is good. Honestly, legit, if a good player plays it, it might be an A-tier deck. But I don't think enough I don't think enough people are going to play it, though. It's maybe a B-tier deck, but A-tier is not terrible. Like, genuinely, the deck has enough techs and power to be A-tier. But I don't know how many people are really going to play it, right?
Yeah, like, there's definitely those diehard Pidgeot Control fans, but I actually find most of them are, like, online warriors.
Yeah. If a good player plays the deck can beat anything in the format, but, you know, if, like, a casual picks it up, they're not going to know how to play the deck properly, and they're just going to lose. But at the World Championships, when you got the best of the best playing, you know, I'm sure someone's going to play it. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Pidgeot Control deck in, like, the top 32 at Worlds. There's a very good chance that does happen. I guess A-tier is fine. I maybe would justify more of a B-tier deck, but A-tier is honestly, like, it's a safe pick, because it's such a strong deck that only the strongest of players are going to play it, meaning the deck will always have a better representation for how it actually looks.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like Lugia, where it's like, I think it could be A-tier, but I'm not really sure if there's going to be representation to warrant it going in A-tier. Lugia will have the representation. I don't know if it'll have the results. Now for, like, the last two decks, probably the most, like, interesting decks in the format. We'll start off with, I'll let you talk completely about Zardpol, because I know you've been playing this. Obviously, you did just win a cup with it. I know you've been playing it to a lot of success lately.
Yeah.
So what do you think going into Worlds?
Honestly, I've thought about it myself. I think it's still, like, not bad. I think it's better than the normal Dragapult list because Charizard fixes a lot of your, like, more awkward matchups. Like, your Guardy matchup is a lot stronger with the Zard. Your Regidrago matchup is a lot stronger with the Zard. It's even good into Charizard itself. You can actually set up Checkmate really easily against Charizard. If the Charizard player doesn't know what they're doing, it's actually super easy to just set up Checkmate with Dragapult and Charizard. To be fair, though, Dragapult kind of does the same thing Dusclops does in a way, where you're spreading damage on the board. You're making your Charizard stronger while you're doing that. But Dragapult is also a very aggressive and strong attacker. The thing I like about the Charizard is that it also fixes your turbo matchups, which are also notoriously bad for Dragapult. Like, the Charizard in the deck just makes Dragapult be able to beat things that it's slightly unfavored against, like Lugia, Gardevoir. It's good into Lost Box, too, because if you can set up a Charizard really easily in the late game, then you have your Dragapult, and then they knock out the Dragapult, you have a Charizard ready to go. So I don't know. I think the deck's insane. Personally, I would call it an A-tier deck. You can say it's B-tier, though, but I genuinely think it's A-tier. I mean, there's a reason why.
I actually do think it is A-tier. Like, I think it's very, very good, and I think
it's insane. The more I play the deck, too, the more I realize just how gross the deck is. It's so freaking good. Like, Charizard is just a ridiculous card, and when you combine it with Dragapult for that early game spread pressure, late game pressure, whatever, the deck's just, it's on another level of just, like, insanity. I don't know, I just don't think people are playing it enough. I mean, there's a reason why Tord and Michael Pramawat both played the deck to NEIC. They both believed in the deck, and they saw really good success with it. There's a good chance Tord could have won the entire tournament if Tord had made top 8. I genuinely think Tord would have won NEIC had he made top 8 with the deck. And the more I play the deck, the more I realize its Guardy matchup is very favored. You arguably actually have the best Guardy matchup out of any deck in the format at the moment with the deck, in my opinion. Your matchup into Charizard is favored because you have Dragapult. Your Drago matchup is scary because of Kyurem and their own Dragapult. But if you set up against Drago, you're fine. You have Radiant Art stuff. I'm very high on the deck. I think your worst matchup maybe is just Lugia, and that's about it.
But like we've talked about, Lugia is Lugia.
Exactly. And the build I'm playing right now, with the Silene and the Kieran and the Neo Upper and the Turo, you have a really, like, you're perfectly fine into Snorlax and Pidgeot. I've played against 3 stall control decks with the deck and have not lost a game yet. Like, the deck's really, it's fine into Pidgeot and Snorlax, in my opinion. Yeah, it's A-tier. I love the deck. I'm gonna call it A-tier. I think it's still fine for Worlds. Yeah, it's good.
I think it's still very good into Worlds, especially, like, if we see Lost Box start getting better, or, like, Sablezard. Let's say Sablezard gets popular because it's like, oh, Zard's good, Sablezard's gonna get popular again, right? I think your Sablezard matchup's gonna be really good. Like, I just don't see a way that's bad, though.
I would argue your Turbo's better, even though, they have Sableye and stuff, which they can get Sableye quicker, and they have Greninja. The Radzard's a little bit tougher to deal with, because they also play the Monkey Dory, but... I would argue I'd rather play against Turbo than Sablezard, to be honest with you. Because Turbo, they don't usually have an answer for Dragapult and Charizard. If you set up like both Zard and Dragapult and stabilize your board, you're probably gonna win. Yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of my opinion. But
yeah,
maybe your stables are
both
better.
I think they're both just fine, right? Like I think you're probably just favored, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. You've obviously played the deck more than I have, but like in my testing, like if I'm playing against Lost Zone Box, like I often can set up checkmate in like halfway through a normal length game where I'm like sitting here. I'm like, yeah, I've probably just won this game now because I've got Charizard and I've got my Dragapult and like everything's just ready, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the last deck we're going to talk about is Charizard, which did get Dust Noir, which it looks like we're heading back into Tier 0 Charizard format again.
Looks like it.
Unfortunately, I actually saw my most success in Tier 0 Charizard format, and I didn't even play Charizard. But like,
that's true.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I think Charizard is so good. Like, there's no arguing. It powers itself up. It was good. It was good by itself. It's got the best attack probably of all time, right? Like,
yeah, it's
180 for 2
bananas.
energies by itself is good, but 180 plus 30 for each prize card is crazy. And in general, like, Charizard gets Dust Noir, it gets even more versatile. It's one bad matchup in Block Lax is now fine because of Perchuant. And like, I just think that it's going to be so good that it's kind of hard to not have it be the best deck in format. It's probably going to win Worlds, if not top 4 or top 2 or whatever Worlds. Like, if we don't see a Charizard in top 8, I don't even know how I'd feel about that, because that'd just be crazy to me. But yeah, this is where we've landed, guys.
Yeah, I think it's pretty accurate. Raging Bolt would probably be B tier too if
we'll put Raging Bolt with the other turbo decks like Moon and Okidogi. Shout out Raging Bolt. I don't know how I forgot that guy, considering like people know me because I liked Raging Bolt. Yeah, this is where we're at. I really appreciate you coming on.
No worries.
And hopefully we can hopefully we can catch up a little sooner. I'm sure we'll see each other at Cups and stuff again eventually.
Hopefully. Yeah.
You've already told everybody where to find you. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and check out our sponsors. Use Katanas. Check out Advanced GG. And until next time, we'll catch you guys later. Have a great day.
Peace.
Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.